Okay, hello and welcome to our Wednesday night live stream. I am your host, Dana Morningstar, and this is a live stream that we do every Wednesday night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and it goes for about 3 hours. So if you are new here, welcome, and if you are returning here, welcome. So for those that were here last week, I just wanted to apologize. My computer just fritzed out on me in the middle of the live stream and just shut down and wouldn't come back on. So I apologize for the abrupt ending last week, but I think we have it all figured out now. So good technology stuff. It's always entertaining. So, and just real quick too, we were going to do book club tomorrow night. Due to poor time management on my end, I have so many things that are due basically in like the next few days, and I don't have time. So I was thinking that we could reschedule it for next Thursday, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So not tomorrow, but the week after. And then that way I can properly prepare for it. So I apologize. Time management. I just thought I could get more done than I could. James is saying last week, yeah, the live stream cut out, and he says it was great to see people staying 45 minutes after. Yes, I was glad to hear that as well. I was so concerned about that because I know this is such a big, a lot of people rely on this. It's their thing that they do every week, and it's kind of their time to feel heard and validated, and it's a sense of community. And I tried to get back on, and it was just the weirdest thing. So I'm glad that you guys were able to stay around and just, hang out and chat and communicate with each other. So got lots of people hopping on. Agatha, hello. Kamami, Egypt. Mariposa, Kim, Teacher Spring. Hooray, New Covenant, Glitterbox. Let's see here. Rob, Tanitria, Karina, Jamie, Lisbeth, I guess. Hooray. Phoenix Rescue. Hey, Lydia, Donna. Good deal. So, okay, let's see. Crystal's hopping on here. So we were talking, actually, I'm going to read you something that Agatha sent me earlier. We were talking about last week, but I don't even know. Agatha, were you even here for this? Like, this might just be one of those coincidence things. But last week we were talking about what would you call them? Like well-intended bad advice, or kind of how things get circulated. And I had showed, where are my little people? I don't know where. Oh, they're over there. It's the hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil, do no evil little people. And when I had ordered them, I was kind of thinking, there's something off about this. And I kind of had to think about it. And I thought, you know what, that's a problem. It's a problem if we don't see evil and if we don't hear evil, because then that's, we're turning a blind eye to things, and we need to see and hear it when it exists so we can address it. So we were talking about kind of these, problematic platitudes is how, oh gosh, who was it? Sam. I think it was Sam who said these. So anyway, so Agatha had sent me one saying, the quote, blood is thicker than water. I think we're all familiar with that quote. And it's generally used in terms of describing family, right? Like our blood relations are thicker than water being friendships or anything else. But the quote actually comes from the saying, the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. And this means that the blood shed in battles bonds soldiers more strongly than simple genetics. It doesn't refer to family at all. So I thought that was interesting and worth sharing And also, I think it speaks to the strength of trauma bonds as well. So just a little bit of trivia there. Okay, let's see. Let me scroll up. Phoenix says, I'm so happy that you're live right now because I'm having a terrible day and night. I got hoovered and love bombed by the ex, and I allowed myself to a point. Now I'm disappointed in myself and I'm starting over in the healing. Well, here's kind of my 2 cents about that. I think it takes most people several times of going through the pain for it to really sink in that there's nothing there for you. And one of the things that I think can help with this is to play out the scenario in your mind. If this were to happen again, this goes for anybody. So if they do start contacting you and you're finding yourself tempted to contact them back, instead of just being like, no, you absolutely can't do this, and trying to convince yourself no, allow yourself to play the scenario out in your mind. Okay, what would happen? You would call them back, and then what? You'd probably go out for dinner, they'd come over, you'd have sex, things would be great for the next, 5 days, 5 weeks? And then what? And then it would start to turn, and then things would get ugly, and then you're just on a fast track to, crazy maker town. And everything just goes off the rails, and then you're miserable, and nothing gets resolved, and it's just conversations from hell, and then the verbal abuse and the emotional abuse and the psychological abuse and the lies and any cheating and on and on and on. And allow yourself to play that out in your mind and to experience the pain of that. And sometimes it can help too to write all this stuff down, keep it on your fridge, and write out what would happen if you were to go back, so you can remember. Because it's very difficult to, I think, just use willpower and staying away from that. It's sort of like an addiction. It's any addiction, whether it's alcohol, cigarettes, drugs, you name it. It's very difficult to battle an addiction with just willpower alone. There's all kinds of different strategies that people tend to use. Support groups are huge, support systems, these different live streams. AA, you have a sponsor with this kind of stuff. You either have a community like this, or you have a therapist or a life coach, or all of the above. There's different strategies that a person can use. Anticipating having cravings, because that's the thing. Like whenever we decide to start or stop something, right? I'm going to quit drinking. I'm going to quit this relationship. I'm going to do this. Oftentimes we make these major decisions when we've experienced a lot of pain. Something pretty significant's happened that caused us to realize, you know what, I can't. I thought I could control this. I thought I could hang in there. I thought I could do all of this coping and hoping, and it's not working. And so now I need to change. The challenge with that is that pain tends to subside in a few days or a week or so. And it can be really difficult to keep that motivation going once that pain subsides. Sort of like if you're like me, you've been trying to lose weight forever, but not really trying, but I guess you feel like you should be trying. It's always on your mind. And then you see a picture of yourself and you're like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe that I look like that. And it's the shock. And then it kind of shocks you into eating right and exercising and doing all these things for a short amount of time until that anxiety reduces. And then you're kind of back to the way you were. So I guess what I'm saying is a lot of times when we quote unquote fail at something, there's something to be said about failing forward. So if you can examine those failures, I consider them more to be setbacks. If you can examine these setbacks and figure out, okay, well, what happened this time? Why was I not successful at achieving my goal? Was I lonely? Was I scared? Was I angry? Was I, what was it? And figure out, okay, what was that train of thinking to lead you to reopen contact? So next time you can anticipate it better and prepare for it better. Yeah. And Phoenix says, yeah, I remind myself of what would happen and what has happened. Yet for some reason, I miss the good through the bad. I now know that that's the trauma bonding. And so I'm just trying to work through that. Yeah. Have you um, kind of filled the void of the person in your life? Because sometimes I think that's a big part of it too, is when um, we're trying to do something new. And it's sort of, again, it's sort of like if you quit smoking or you quit drinking, and then there's still that pull there. But if we haven't filled it, if we've stopped one thing, but then haven't started something new to take its place, then it's just that much more challenging, because we're just kind of sitting around waiting for the cravings to go away on their own. Okay, let's see. Let me scroll up here. And also to Phoenix and anybody else that's struggling with this, because I think most people do. It's difficult. Relationships, those are some of the deepest bonds that we have. And I mean, it's right up there, that the pull to relationships like this, it can be as strong as a heroin addiction. So I think there's a lot to be said for kind of using this as an exercise in self-compassion when we don't do things as well as we would have liked. Because it's just difficult. It's just really, really difficult. Okay. And she says, yeah, I haven't been able to fill the void, and this support group is my support. I'm glad that this support group is helpful and that you do have something. I'm sure you've heard me talk about it before, but have you had any interest at all in looking into meetup groups, meetup.com? It can really be, I have met so many people through those groups that are just in all different stages of life. And it's, I don't know, it can be really kind of cool. So that might be an idea to check out. Let's see here. Teacher Spring says, I've been on this healing journey for 2 years. Occasionally, the support groups and live streams make me uncomfortable now. At first, they were comforting. It's a process. And sometimes I just need distractions, happy distractions. Absolutely. And that is one of the challenges, I think, I know for sure with the support groups, but I think with healing in general is everybody's at a different stage. And when a person kind of gets to that place where their focus is more on them, and it can just be it can be triggering to hear the stories of other people, and to even kind of be reminded about, oh my gosh, yeah, that's where I was. And I didn't, it's right when you kind of first fall down that rabbit hole, it's so traumatic. And then sometimes being reminded of that and seeing other people that are, this is day one for them, it can just really be intense and bring back a lot of unpleasant feelings. Oh, okay, hold on. Let's see here. New Covenant asks, how long does it take the new supply to really see the narcissist for what it is? It all depends on their behavior and where their own boundaries and standards are with this kind of stuff. For a lot of people, I mean, really, a lot of people, it can take quite a while, because most people have this kind of worldview that other people are like them, and that if other people have some sort of bad behavior, then they view them as, oh, they're just a broken version of me. And so kind of given enough time and love and rehab and religion, they'll eventually be like me. And we'll have the same moral code. We'll have the same motivations. We'll, it's really difficult for normal, decent people to fathom, I think, kind of the full spectrum of problematic personality traits out there. So even within ourselves. So it's not even just within other people. I'm working on this book right now, and there's a whole section on self-esteem in general and what it really means versus what most people think it means. And this was something that tripped me up for a very, very long time. I was so confused when people talked about kind of healing from all of this and survivors of abuse and this, that, and the other. And they would talk about low self-esteem. And I was like, no, I don't think that's me. Like, I don't walk around hating myself. I mean, I don't walk around like loving myself, but I don't walk around, feeling like dirt. And it took me many, many years to realize that that's only one area of our self-esteem. Other areas that comes through is in our boundaries, standards, and deal breakers. And also the way that we kind of perceive the behavior of other people and what we do with that. So a person with I would say lower self-esteem tends to believe that if they're being mistreated, then that's somehow justified. If somebody had a bad day, a bad week, a bad childhood, what have you, and they just rip into them, a person with low self-esteem is like, what they're understanding about that. Oh, well, this just happened. And maybe it is my fault. Maybe I could have been I should have done more with my hair tonight, or maybe I should have cooked a better meal, or maybe there's some truth in what they're saying. And versus a person that has healthy self-esteem, it's like, well, there may be some truth in that. Like, maybe my hair could use some work, or dinner could have been a little bit better. However, that does not make it okay for somebody to talk to me like that. And so they don't tolerate that kind of stuff. But again, this stuff's not taught. And so it's easy for anybody to get all kinds of tangled up in it. So same thing with boundaries. Person with, it's like I said, it's stuff's not taught. And so it's so easy to just get knocked off balance. That's really what it is at the end of the day. And once you know different, you can start doing different. And I have found with working with people in the support group and in here, sometimes it only takes a handful of these things for the lights to go on. People are like, oh my gosh, bingo, that's it. I didn't realize that was where I was getting tripped up. And then that resolved it. Now they're on a different track. So let's see here. Oh, that's awesome, Tanitria. She says, I'm grateful, Dana, to you. I'm able to get in touch with myself and my gut and distance or cut off people quicker that display very toxic behavior. Very cool. And what I realized the other day, because this is a question that we get here, you guys have sure seen it 1,000 times, is it's very common for somebody to say, I really need to know kind of what are the major red flags. I need to quit attracting these people, or I need to figure out how to avoid them. And we talk about that a lot, but it dawned on me that one of the reasons that question keeps coming up over and over again is because what a lot of people are missing, again, because this stuff's not taught, is they don't know how to keep themselves safe otherwise. So it's sort of like, well, the solution must be that I need to avoid them, basically is what I need to avoid them, or I need to quit attracting them. Because if they were to come into my life, then I just don't know how to keep myself safe. Versus where I think so many of us are now, where it's like, okay, you know what? If somebody problematic does come into my life, we have a different skill set. Instead of hoping and coping, which is what that previous mindset would say, okay, right? So, oh, I need to, I'm so afraid of attracting them. You tell me how to avoid them and then I'll be safe. That mindset, because in that person's toolbox, they have hoping and coping as ways of dealing with situations, versus the new us within our toolbox has assertive communication and boundaries. And so if somebody, and because too, things aren't so cut and dry. There's a lot of people out there that might not be like full on personality disordered. They might just have some stuff about them that's just not okay with you. And so once we get better at being able to assert ourselves and to kind of hold our ground and to say no and all of these things, those people tend to show themselves to the door because they just get frustrated and irritated. We're just not on the same wavelength at all. So it just, it all kind of works out. Yeah. And Ricky says, they can smell the fumes of empathy exuding from every pore and hair follicle. Yes. And I will add too, so this was the old me when I had that toolkit of, and that was my mind. I really feel like this is kind of just the natural progression that people tend to go through, where it's, okay, I need to know all these red flags because I need to avoid them. Because they're dividing up the world in very kind of cut and dry terms of either a person's a narcissist or they're a normal person. And so, and it's just getting your sea legs with stuff. It's how people learn, is kind of by identifying the extremes, and then you kind of slowly work to understand, that there's more gray area between there. But in my attempts to keep myself safe, it was this thought of, oh no, yes, I am chumming the waters of these predatory people. Okay, I need to smile less. I need to make less eye contact. I need to really change all of these things about me. I need, shoulders back, head up. I need to walk with a purpose. And maybe I just need to be, basically I need to be somebody different. And I really put all this pressure on myself, and I was freaking myself out so much. That settled down once I realized, this is my life. I'm in charge. I set the pace. So if somebody starts creeping me out, I don't need to just sit there and deal with it. Like, I can do other things. I can say something. I can, at my work, I had an issue with a security guard and a coworker, two coworkers actually. One was a friend, but then one was this guy who just kept hitting on me and wouldn't leave me alone, and it was creeping me out. But I didn't know how to address stuff back then. And so I would hope that it would pass. And of course it didn't. And then it would just get more and more and more uncomfortable until I would either just completely freak out or, I guess with that one guy coworker, he ended up getting a girlfriend, and then that kind of did resolve itself. But, it's, I guess the point is, once you realize that you set the pace, that you don't have to be dragged along, it's just an absolute game changer. Yes. And Jack was saying, I think it's fair to give yourself time to get your confidence leg stronger, and that you walk before you try to run. Yes, absolutely. And this is one of the reasons I'm such a huge fan of meetup.com groups, because it's very low stakes. The concerning thing I see a lot of people do is they get out of a bad relationship. They're like, okay, you know what? I got to heal. I'm not ready to date. And so they just kind of bench themselves 6 months, 18 months, whatever it might be. And then as soon as they get to the point where they're no longer suicidal and that they're no longer feeling absolutely emotionally devastated, they start dating again. But because they haven't resolved a lot of this other stuff, because here's the thing with the self-esteem stuff we were talking about earlier, is even if all of this was perfectly healthy before your relationship with a narcissist, which I guarantee you it wasn't, because I really don't feel that anybody has examined this level of self-reflection isn't taught and it's not fostered. So I just really find it hard to believe that anybody has this level of self-awareness. I really, at this point in time, I feel like a person has to go through this in order to be motivated to cultivate that level of self-awareness. But hypothetically speaking, we'll just say person has wonderful, they're healthy, well-adjusted, balanced, self-esteem, all of these things. I guarantee you that after a relationship with a person like this, there's going to be major things that you need to examine that you're not even aware of. And so, some of those things being needing to be able to tell when you're being mistreated, and when you're being treated in a way that's making you uncomfortable is a big one. And so a lot of people, they just jump back into dating and then like, oh my gosh, I met another awful person. And, and then they start internalizing it. What's so wrong with me? Why am I attracting them? But really there's other things going on there that's going on. It's just under your radar. But once you start waking up to it, you can't unsee it. So meetup.com is great for it because it's very low risk. It's, I encourage people to join 24 different groups, anything that even sounds remotely interesting to you. And trivia night, outdoor adventures, yoga, I don't know, going to the dog park, farmers markets, whatever it might be. And kind of practicing some of these skills there with total strangers and realizing that you can leave, like you can get up and leave. If somebody's making you uncomfortable, if you're just not feeling it, you set the pace. You set the pace. And I think that could even be an exercise in and of itself, is just practicing leaving early and I think a lot of it's going to be getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, because setting boundaries and asserting yourself involves being uncomfortable, at least at first. Then there will come a time where you can't even imagine that it becomes significantly more uncomfortable to not do this. And then you're like, I cannot believe the stuff that I went along with because I didn't want any confrontation whatsoever. It's just mind-boggling. Okay, let's see here. Okay, scrolling up here. That's a good question. Abuse Free says, Dana, how do I discern between a conflict and a power struggle? I feel many people do power struggle and label it as conflict. Well, I guess you could say on some level, every conflict is, to a mild degree, a power struggle. But I guess the way that I would look at it is where it becomes problematic is when there's no resolution that can be reached, and when the conflict or power struggle is over your boundaries. Well, yeah, basically over your boundaries. So somebody's trying to just encroach and tell you how to do things, how you should, live your life and how you should dress, and they're just micromanaging that kind of stuff. Then that's not anything I would get involved in. But if you're working towards a solution and they have some sort of issue and you're like, okay, let's address this, let's figure this out, let's get to the bottom of it, and they keep shifting the issue, and you're starting to get the vibe of, I think this person just wants to fight. Then at that point, you just have to disengage, because it's nothing, they're not looking for resolution, they're just looking to argue. Let's see here. And here's the thing too with people are talking about kind of like, red flags and um, just different kind of things. What I've noticed in the support group, especially, is people will say things like, well, today, for example, we had a gal who'd posted something and she said, I'm feeling really disrespected. And the guy was his behavior was way out of line, like way out of line. And this is part of kind of the waking up process where people will start realizing this and they're like, oh, you know what? I'm seeing, I'm feeling like something's off. And then they'll tell you more about it. And if you've been here for any length of time, you'll know, you're like, oh yeah, well, okay. The reason that you're feeling that something's off is this person's violating your boundaries right and left. Like if you've said, hey, no, don't call me a certain name, don't joke with me like that. And they keep doing it, or they keep, picking on you, but they say that they're joking, or they keep making lewd jokes, or they're touching you in a way that you're not okay with, this kind of stuff. When we first start waking up to boundaries and getting our kind of sense of agency back, it starts off, we have trouble pinpointing it. Like, well, I can't really quite figure out, is it me? Is it them? And then you realize, oh my gosh, no, this is why. It's these continual boundary violations. That's my problem. So, and over time, when you're able to pinpoint at this stuff, it doesn't feel like you're able to, I think, to get more you're able to validate yourself because you know why something's wrong. It doesn't feel so nebulous, like, oh, it's just a feeling or any of that. You're like, no, these are my boundaries. I don't like being talked to like that. I don't like being touched like that. I don't like that. And so I don't care if this person jokes like that. I don't care if they don't mean it. I said no, and they're continuing to do it. So now they don't care about my boundaries. They've made that very clear. They're just going to keep doing what they do. So now I need to do something different. Like, this isn't workable. Let's see here. Let me scroll. RC says, how does the narcissist always know what I'm thinking and is really good at reading me? Well, the narcissist doesn't always know what you're thinking. But some people are they're easier to read than others. And so, manipulative people in general, or if they've studied behavior in general, and I will tell you too, you're probably a lot better at reading people than you give yourself credit for. I think we all are. We just tend to kind of gloss over anything that makes us uncomfortable is really kind of what it is. Yeah, local tourist said, and I think some of us can read body language. It's close to reading a person's mind. Yeah, I agree. It's, I'd mentioned this before in a previous live stream. One of the more, there's all these different like little aha moments you have along the way and understanding, kind of putting all of this together. And when I was in nursing school, one of the homework things that we had to do was to start observing people, because it's a big part of your job when you're a nurse, is just you're continually assessing people, and you've got to develop these skills of what's normal and what's abnormal. And so what I found so fascinating about that was, here I didn't realize how much information that we are kind of socially conditioned to just overlook because we don't want to be seen as rude. And that can be the difference between life and death. If you're in the medical profession and you have a patient, because it makes you uncomfortable. You don't want to talk about their gray, crepey skin, or, you know, that they're walking with a limp, or that that their shoes have holes in them, stuff like that. It's uncomfortable to bring stuff like that up, but it can make the difference between helping that person get services or healthcare that they need and them dying. So, and you think about it, that's just on a physical level. This is just a basic physical stuff. Observing other people. How is their eye contact? Are they making eye contact? Are they avoiding eye contact? Are they, is their speech? Is it clear? Is it coherent? What is the content of the conversation when they are talking to you? How is their gait? How are they walking? Is it shuffled? Are they limping? Is it a steady, confident stride? How are they dressed? Are they dressed appropriately for the weather? Do they smell? How is their hygiene? These kinds of things. It's amazing, just basic physical stuff that we, unless we're kind of trained otherwise, we just don't really, a lot of us just don't notice it. We might notice it, but we just want to be polite. And so we don't want to seem like we're judging. And so we put it in the back of our mind. And so you think about that kind of stuff. Well, it's even more so with personality stuff. That's a lot easier to overlook because we just don't want to be seen as judgmental or rude. So it's very eye-opening when you truly start seeing behavior for what it is, because information is not missed, it's dismissed. Your brain is absorbing all of that. It's just not filtering up to your conscious mind. And once it does, you just see the world completely differently. I have found, Jack was saying, yeah, I think there's a lot to nonverbal communication. I think we've gotten out of touch with it due to the screen-bound digital age. Yes, and that's a very valid, kind of scary point as well. Here's one thing that I have found is more often than not, when people say, when they ask for advice, or when they say, I don't know if it's me, and they're waffling, there's that introspection going on, more often than not, there is an issue. I would say 95%, maybe even 99% of the time, there's a legitimate issue there. It's not them being hypervigilant or assuming that we're talking about, like a kind of a fully functioning person, I guess. With a person with all of their mental faculties, we'll say it that way. But most of the time when we're feeling that something's off, it's generally because something is off. Our brain, that part of our brain is millions, I forget how old, 10 million something years old. It's the oldest part of our brain, and it picks up stuff that are especially our conscious part of our brain does not. So it's very difficult to get a false positive with that kind of stuff. And even if it's not, and that's the other thing too, we don't even need to know if it's actually like an actual danger. If you're feeling like something's off, that's a sign just to take a few steps back, because I guarantee like you don't feel that way around safe people and safe situations. Okay, there was a question about boundaries. Luxury says, is there a way to have boundaries without feeling like an a-hole? I guess the only way, once you really start raising your standards, your boundaries are going to follow, because then it just becomes a given. You don't even have to think about it. And I guarantee you right now, there's certain things in your life that you have standards for that you wouldn't even think twice. For example, if you were to, I don't know, meet somebody, you go on a first date and they are just really vile. burping. They're just telling all kinds of just jokes that aren't funny. They just have no manners. They're just really crass and just, it just is a total turnoff, that kind of thing. If your standards say, hey, I don't want this in my life, I'm not going to be treated like this, it's a lot easier to then say, no, I'm not interested in a second date if they contact you again. And it's the same kind of thing across the board. Once you start raising your standards, and once in the way that you do that, so like a lot of these things we were talking about, kind of the biggest one is, kind of discerning when you're being mistreated and when is that okay, right? And so a person with low self-esteem is like, well, I don't know, there's reasons that could be okay. Person with healthy self-esteem is like, no, it's not okay. Like, I don't care what's going on with you. Like, I expect that you treat me with dignity and respect. And if you don't, then we're going to have an issue, like where I'm going to set my boundary, and then I'm going to start getting some distance here because that's not okay with me. And it's just a thing that you do from there on out, because you're able to see their behavior as immature and problematic and not workable. But in more like subtle ways, I think too, a lot of it, when you're around the right people, setting boundaries is just not really that big of a thing. I think you'll find that a lot of other people really just don't care. Stuff that we tend to make this huge deal. Your coworkers go out to lunch every Friday to a restaurant you hate. Let's say, for example, and you're like, man, I just want to be alone. I just want to be left alone in my office. I want to take a nap, or I want to play, I don't know, solitaire, and I just really don't want to go out to lunch with them. I think you'll find if you were just to say, hey guys, I think I'm going to pass on going out to lunch this Friday, that they would get over it pretty quickly. But for a lot of us, just setting those little boundaries can just feel so uncomfortable and awkward. But the more you do it, sort of like a muscle, the more you use it, the stronger it gets. And there does come a time where you just don't give it a whole lot of thought, especially with little things like that. And if somebody does have an issue with it, right away, you're almost knocked off guard, because you see how kind of ridiculous it is for them to have an issue, because they don't get to vote because you set the pace because it's your life. So they might try to guilt trip you, but you can kind of see that, hey, you're stepping over my line, and you can think whatever you want to think, but I'm still going to do things my way. Let's see. Nikki says, how can I set boundaries when it's my manager who controls my hours and money? I love my job, but she's getting worse. That kind of stuff is difficult. And in those kinds of situations, it sometimes does have to just come down to finding a different job, because setting boundaries with an authority figure like that, it can be rocking the boat. And if they're immature, if they're bitter or vindictive, then it can be difficult because you're rocking the boat that you're sitting in. So yeah, that's hard. You might want to start with setting a boundary with something very small with her. So for example, if something, I don't know, some sort of like inappropriate request that she might be making, I don't know, she's expecting you to work through your lunch, let's say, for example, right? And you could say something like, well, I know that it helps if you start off with, it's kind of the whole compliment sandwich. Like, you're saying something, you're trying to kind of find middle ground with the first thing that you say, or I guess you're trying to find middle ground. The first thing you say, then the second thing you say, the middle thing that you say is kind of you asserting your boundary, and then you're following it up with something complimentary. And the reason that works is because when people feel defensive, they go on the defense. and no resolution is going to be reached when a person feels defensive. So it's not just people-pleasing behavior, it's a true kind of negotiation strategy. So starting it off with, she says, hey, Nikki, I really need you to work through lunch. You're not going to get paid, but I just need you to work. There's a lot of stuff to do. Saying something like, gosh, yes, you're absolutely right. There sure is a lot of things that need to get done around here. And, I've been working really hard all day long. And I really appreciate that you're so focused on this. I can't work through lunch today. You could either leave it at that, or you could say, sometimes I think too, when it's setting boundaries, it can help. A lot of people fall into kind of justifying them, and that's okay. Like, it's okay to start off with, say, oh, you know what? I have other plans for lunch today, even if your other plans are just not working unpaid. So like, yes, I have other plans for lunch today. But again, I appreciate you asking, and I'll make sure I work really hard this afternoon. So that's a lot more palatable than just saying, no, I'm not going to do that, because that tends to not go over very well with anybody. So kind of learning tactfully, I think, how to set boundaries is still for sure. And it depends on the situation. Like if you've got somebody that's kind of creeping on you at work, coming straight out and just saying, hey, you know what? I don't find those kinds of jokes funny. Or, if you have a boyfriend or whatever, I've got a boyfriend, this is just not okay with me, or this is just not okay with me. Even if I was single, it's not okay with me. I don't like being talked to like that. Or I don't, whatever, however, I wouldn't get too hard on yourself with finding the right wording right out of the gate. Like, this will come in time. The big skill here is to somehow try to slow it down or stop it. So whatever you need to say to kind of change, to set the pace, basically. Ew, yikes. Nikki says, my boss is awful. She makes sexual remarks nonstop. Yeah. And I think, sometimes the solution is to find another job and to really let that motivate you. Okay, I need to start getting my resume together. And because life's too short. Life's too short for that kind of stuff. And if it's not stopping, you've gone to HR, I will tell you the problematic situations that I've been in with work and, just kind of throughout my life. Nursing school was an absolute nightmare. And then towards the tail end, this last job I had, it was great for like 4 or 5 years. And then the tail end, it was just absolutely awful. And I will tell you though, I have to say, some of the biggest lessons I learned, especially in nursing school, the big lesson I learned out of that is, because you have no power when you're there, and you can't switch schools, because then there's generally like a 3-year waiting list, and it's this whole process, and your credits don't transfer, and it's just a nightmare. And so we were just stuck in this awful program with these awful instructors for the most part. Some of them were okay, but a lot of them they were horrible, like eating their own young kind of stuff. And the big lesson I took from that was, I will never again allow myself to be treated like that. I don't care. I don't care how much money I make, how much, I don't care. Nothing's worth that kind of stress, and the damage that it does to your mental health is just not worth it. And so when that kind of stuff started up at my last job, again, fantastic up until the tail end. And then I we had tried to get it resolved. There were other coworkers in the mix that were trying to get stuff resolved. It wasn't getting resolved. And then finally, it just kind of felt like the universe was telling me, like, Dana, this is no longer for you. And because it was just all of this stuff, it was just nonstop. Finally, I was like, you know what? I'm done. I'm done. And I'm so glad that I did that, because it kind of gave me the confidence of, yes, I can distance myself from problematic people and problematic situations. The other big lesson with that was it really reinforced to me to have about 6 months of savings at all times. There's no excuse, because if you don't have anything in the bank, it's really difficult to jump out of a relationship or to jump out of a bad job or get out if you need to. Kiara says, Dana, do you ever feel like you act like a person you're not in order to keep yourself safe and unintimidating to others? I've been doing this for years unintentionally, and I don't know how to stop. Help. The way that I had found myself doing this, that's such a great question. There's times where I do this intentionally, and then there were times where I was doing it unintentionally. So when I was doing it, I'll explain a little bit of both, but when I was doing it unintentionally was when I was doing it from a place of fear. So let's say, for example, I had a really scary patient come in, and we knew that this person had a history of like violent attacks and was dangerous. I found myself becoming very ingratiating. So that was the other skill that I had in my toolbox. It was hoping, coping, and ingratiating. And so ingratiating, kind of this people-pleasing, overly friendly type behavior. And so my voice, I would find my voice getting really high, and I would just become very overly schmoozy nice. Oh my goodness, I love your jacket. How are you? Oh, come on in. Yes. Oh, that's so fantastic. And how are you? And what can I do for you? And all of that, just killing somebody with kindness. And once I realized that that's what I was doing, I was blown away by that. And so then I had to make more of a point to, I guess, start noticing my voice. That was the first sign for me of, okay, I'm nervous. And so my voice has gone way up. I need to really like breathe and get my voice in my center and come at this, especially in that kind of environment. Like, this is my office. Like, I'm in control. I don't need to let anybody else in here. If you're going to be a creep, then security is going to be in here with you. So coming from a place of strength and still being able to be pleasant and polite and professional, but getting rid of that ingratiating stuff. A lot of this stuff it's practice. So practicing kind of lowering your voice, getting centered within yourself, just bringing that awareness. What kind of topics of conversation are you engaging in? Complimenting somebody when you're nervous, kind of giving false compliments because you're just trying to appease them in the situation. It's very insightful when you start seeing your behavior in a different way. But there are ways where I'm intentionally trying to come across as safe. So, back when I was working as a nurse, if I was working with children, if I was working with victims who had been assaulted, somebody who was traumatized, yes. And even now, very much a concerted effort of, I want to provide a calm, soothing, safe place. And I want everything that I'm doing to signal that. And so it's not coming from a place of manipulation. It's coming from a place of kind of positive influence, because I know that in order for any healing to happen, that a person's got to be able to feel safe and secure and comfortable. Because if they're still in that fight or flight mode, they're defensive. They're not going to open up to you. They're not going to trust you. They're not going to, they're just going to be on guard the whole time. And so I just try to come across as, just to provide a safe place for people with, again, there's no expectation. There's no anything. It's just, it's important for people to feel calm if they're trying to move forward in healing. Does that help at all? And here's the thing too, something that I had noticed before about the, kind of being mindful about how you're coming across is different, and especially with people that have experienced trauma, is everybody has different triggers. And so for somebody, you just have to always be taking the temperature of a situation. So if what I'm doing is really off-putting, so let's say somebody was traumatized by somebody who did a lot of the same things. They smiled, they were friendly, they were inviting. If I'm getting that signal to them that they're uncomfortable with that, I immediately back off, because that's not my intention. My intention is not to make them unsettled whatsoever. So from like a nurse or, kind of social work type perspective, there's a time and place for this skill set, right? And so anyways, I don't know, I'm rambling. Let's see here. Let me scroll up. Yes, I hear you. Mara says, I'm sorry, Anna says, I hate when I'm calm, but very firm, and I'm accused of having an anger issue. Yes, that kind of stuff is crazy making. But here's the thing, like, to a person who doesn't understand boundaries, in general, either way, there's just kind of this whole lack of boundaries. Whenever somebody starts trying to set boundaries, they view it as, if a person has no boundaries and is on the side of being very others oriented, if you set boundaries, they're going to think you're mean and cruel. For a person who's more on this self-absorption side of the spectrum, and they think it should be all about them, and you set boundaries, they're also going to think that you're mean and cruel. So it's only people that have healthy boundaries that can appreciate healthy boundaries, basically. That's why you've just got to get to the place where, other people don't get to vote. So if they think, oh, well, I think you're so mean and cruel that you're not allowing your sister who's horribly abusive or she's got a drug addiction, move in, her and her 3 children who are just off the wall, full of energy, and they've got all kinds of issues. You're so mean for not letting them move into your house. If you're like, hey, I cannot bring this into my house. So other people might not agree, but they don't get to vote because they're not you. It's not their life. It's your life. Other people don't need to be okay with what you decide. Kim says, yeah, I've heard when setting boundaries, oh, you don't care. And that's really common because this stuff is not taught. And so there's a lot of people out there that just don't understand. They don't understand. It's weird. It's like a whole different social skill that people are missing. And then when you start using it, they just look at you weird because they're like, what are you talking about? That's not how we do things. Like there's this kind of unspoken code around here. This is what we do. Commitment takes work, no matter how much you're being abused. Family is forever, no matter how much you're abused. You're not perfect, so therefore you should tolerate abuse. What are some other messages? Oh, all parents love their children, or they did the best they could. Even if they, abused you horribly, they did the best they could. So you should forgive them. Oh, forgive and forget. I mean, there's all kinds of things that are spouted out to people. And so then when you start going against the grain and you're like, you know what, actually, I don't think I'm going to subscribe to that view anymore. I think I'm going to, because this doesn't work for me. People will look at you like, what do you mean? You can't do that. You can't do that. This is what we do. This is what we do in our family. We all get together for every single holiday. We're all absolutely miserable. Everybody just, they numb out in their own way. They're either on their phone or they're drinking or they're doing something. And that's what we do because we're family. When you just realize, you know what, this is not enjoyable. I'll come over for the afternoon and then I'll leave. People don't get it and they don't need to get it. That's yes. And that's another one. Interested says, yeah, Dana. Yes, it came from a person who approached me as a friend. So it took me a while for it to figure out that this was no friend. And that's the other thing is people are like, there's this idea of if somebody wants to be friends with you, that you have to be friends with them or you're mean or that you're holding a grudge. And so many, it's so wild to me. Like there's so many of these words that we're all, for years, decades, we've all been misdefining. So we've been walking around thinking that love means, oh, I just feel so intensely towards this person and they're all I think about. And, it's just this level of intensity. Well, that's not love. That's intensity. Those are intense feelings. That's it. It's not love. Love is based on depth. It's based on a deep appreciation of who that person is. It's based on dignity and respect. It's synonymous with appreciation. If you love something, you appreciate it, you value it, you show that you love it through your actions. If you can't swap out the words love and value, then something's off. And so then people are like, oh yes, I love this person. I feel like I want to commit suicide. My whole life's blown to pieces, but I love them. And we get in trouble like that because we're linking up a pair abuse with love, and it's not even in the same zip code. And same thing with friends, like, oh, well, this person's my friend. And then we're confused because then if they're abusing us in some way, it doesn't compute. And that's where that cognitive dissonance comes from. It's sort of like, well, but they're my friend, but then they're being a jerk. So, but I guess they're my friend. And so then we're holding on to the good times. Well, they're my friend. I mean, I enjoy hanging out with them sometimes. They have a great sense of humor. We go to the bar and play foosball or play trivia. They're my friend. But it's important that we look at, kind of the full picture. And if they're crossing your boundaries, violating your boundaries, being abusive in any way, then that's not a friend. And, same thing with examining the concept of commitment or, relationships or just any of this stuff. It's no wonder we get all tangled up. Well, and here's something too. Dina says, Dana, I want friends like that. Friends I always feel good around and never have to question their behavior or look on Google to find out why they behave the way they do. So I was just thinking about this earlier. What was I thinking about with this? Oh, I guess it's kind of the reverse of what I was saying, how a lot of people are like, okay, can you tell me what to look for to keep out narcissists and problematic people? I need to just avoid them. I need to avoid them or I need to stop attracting them. And then the opposite of that thought is what you were just saying of, I really want to meet these people. Where are these wonderful people that just respect my boundaries and they're just there for me and I don't have to second guess their intentions? And it's the same skill set that's used. That's the kicker. So, and I don't know if you've heard me talk about this, but this was a really profound realization in my own life when I realized, until I got these skills down of boundaries and standards and deal breakers, and until I understood when I was being mistreated, and odds are, even a remotely healthy friendship, it's going to feel uncomfortable, because if we're so used to being people pleasing, if we're so used to putting ourselves on the back burner, if we're so used to having these dynamics of, I need to sink myself in order to save you, and we're just used to this imbalance, we're in a weird kind of way, we're almost seeking this out. And any type of healthy friendship, it's probably going to feel flat. And it might even feel uncomfortable, because it's sort of like, well, I don't know what to do, because this is my role. This is what I do. I'm a helper. I'm a caregiver. But if you don't need me to take care of you or to be there for you or what have you, then I don't know how to be your friend. And so then it's this different skill set of learning how to gravitate towards that mutuality. And this is all a process. Like, it's just learning new things, but yeah, it's a game changer. Because before, I think probably for a lot of us, I know for me, what I was attracted to in people, I was literally attracted to hurt people. And because, you see somebody that's hurting, and they just broke up with their boyfriend. They just, I don't know, they've got some sort of challenge in their life. They're overwhelmed with their children. They need some sort of comfort. And still, obviously, right, this is still kind of this is what I do with my life. So it's still a very big part of who I am. And trying to navigate boundaries with that has been a challenge. But I feel like this is what I was born to do. So anyways, it's a challenge. It's a challenge to do this. It's a challenge. It's becoming less of a challenge to not do this in my personal life. Whereas before it was, like the quote unquote friends I had in my life, I bonded to them because they were in some sort of crisis and I was there to help bail them out. And then down the road, I realized, oh my gosh, we might have certain things in common, but not really. I'm more the friend that they call when they need help. That's it. And it was just kind of this unequal dynamic, just very, yeah. TJ says, yeah, Dana, I'm that way too. Where helpers and certain types misuse our caring and helping for weakness. They do, but the other challenge with that is, if we're only drawn to people that are in crisis, then we're continually setting up those same dynamics. The whole dynamic from the get is not balanced. It's not based on mutuality. It's already uneven. So it's really kind of seeking out those friendships and those relationships where it's based on mutuality, like, or we don't feel sorry for the other person, or that they don't need us, that it's sort of like, okay, this person, that we can relate, we have other things in common with them, that we're able to have a friendship on different levels, not just, them being in crisis, basically. Okay, let's see here. Martha says, yes, I'm the person who everyone tells every secret to. Yes. Yep. I hear that. And Kevin says, I was always attracted to very independent people. I'm very dependent. You know, and you bring up a good point, Kevin, because this stuff can come out in different ways. That being one of them. So for example, I am the exact opposite. I've always been fiercely independent from a very young age. And Pia Melody had talked about this in her book, and I forget which book, it might have been Facing Codependence. She talks about how these things can kind of come and surface in different ways. And one of them was kind of wantless and needless. And where for whatever reason, a person's gotten to the place where they're like, you know what, I'm tired of being let down. So I don't want anything. I don't need anything. And they just kind of put up these walls, and that kind of stuff flies under the radar. Cause it's like, okay, well, as a child, it's like, oh, this child is so adult, or they're so resilient. And it's not that. It's, some stuff that's out of balance there. But then the opposite side of that, yes, it's if a person's self-esteem has been eroded in other ways, then it creates this sense of continual self-distrust, where they're like, you know what, I'm not really sure what I want or what I think or what's best for me. And so then we start looking outside of ourselves, like with what you're describing, and then seeking out people that come across as very strong and very independent, because there's that sense of security there of, okay, I'm going to kind of hitch my wagon to that train because they know where they're going. And that's all of this stuff. When it's out of balance, it can and will create issues. But I tell you though, it really can be such a beautiful thing when you can find that center for you, like whatever, and you'll know when you get there, in large part based on how you feel. If you're feeling this kind of chronic agitation, irritation, frustration, resentment, these are all signs that there's still some things that need to get back into balance. So keep going. And the more those feelings soften, the more on track you are. And this is an ever evolving process. So how you might feel today about things might feel very different a week from now, or a month from now, or a year from now. And so it's just this continual kind of taking the temperature, or taking your pulse and seeing kind of where you are. Like you will know. I use the analogy in my book of, first, all of this can seem so overwhelming. And if you've ever had to learn how to drive a stick shift, it's a lot. You have, the gas and the brake and the clutch, and you have the emergency brake, and then you're having to shift gears, and there's all this stuff going on, and you've got to master getting used to rolling back on a hill if you're stopped at a stoplight or a stop sign, and how you're going to handle that, and handling traffic, and you're continually shifting, and when to upshift and when to downshift, and all of this stuff. Like there's so much to figure out. And when you're first learning it, it takes all of your concentration, and you're really having to think about the gears, and, I better not grind the gears, or better not pop the clutch, and your car jumps and smashes into the one in front of you, all of this stuff. But then eventually you get it down, and then it's effortless. And then you just kind of forget that there was ever a time that you didn't know how to do this. It's kind of like riding a bike. There's all these things to consider at first, but it's not always going to be like this. So I know that this process might sound really overwhelming to a lot of people, but a lot of it really, you can just break it down into learning to tune inward and paying attention to how you're feeling. If you're feeling, and maybe even identify, because gosh, man, this stuff is just not taught. I know I keep saying that, but it's just so frustrating because there's so much to it, and it's just such a game changer. But examining ways that, how do you handle stress? Do you know when you're stressed out? Do you know when you're in emotional pain? What does that feel like? Do you know when you're feeling anxious or when you're feeling frustrated? These kinds of things. So getting in tune with how do these things feel? Sometimes I think for a lot of us, because we've gotten so used to numbing out, you know, like you just get used to this kind of way of living, especially when you've got some sort of majorly dysfunctional people in your life. You know, the whole thing is basically don't question what we say, go along with everything, don't have any hurt feelings, don't have any problem with our behavior. If you do have a problem with our behavior, you pretend like it never happened. So you're basically growing up or in this relationship with, you're just being gaslighted all the time. And when a person's being told, when their whole experience is being denied across the board, what you think and what you feel, everything you're wrong about, it takes a little while to get that back. So getting in tune with, okay, this is how, I handle, or this is how I feel when I'm stressed out. Maybe I grind my teeth, I get a headache, I get a neck ache, I get shoulder pain, back pain. Maybe you get tired all the time. Maybe your skin breaks out. What are some signals that your body is sending to you that's letting you know that things are kind of out of whack? The cool thing too is it's like pulling a string on a sweater. Is once you are on track and you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that my headaches were connected to how much I hate my job, right? Or how much I hate my mother, or whatever it might be. Once you're starting to make these connections of, oh my gosh, yes, I just thought I had a bad back because I don't know, I have big boobs, or I had a back injury when I was a kid. I didn't realize that actually it's all of this tension from this relationship, or, from sleeping on a mattress that's way too old because it felt like it was too much of a luxury for me to go out and spend the money on myself. When you start thinking about these things, you're like, oh my gosh, yeah, that's actually what's really going on. Very eye-opening. Okay, let's scroll up here. Okay, a mind for life says, ask Dana, sometimes it's us that has the issue in our relationship, though, our PTSD, etc. And it can be easy to say that the other person is unlovable and bad for us. How do you know when you have the issues? So, yes. Well, I guess here's the way I look at it is I think it's helpful because this stuff is not taught for everybody to go into it, myself included, with the possibility that there is a lot of things that we need to learn. Because it's peeling back the layers of all kinds of dysfunctional messages that we've been taught from family and friends and religion and society and movies and TV. It's coming at you at every single angle. So it takes some doing to start questioning these things. I just assume that, yes, there's all issues that we have that we can examine. And I'll get into that here in a second. Thank you, Jamie, for the live stream donation. She says, I'm still healing one day at a time. Thank you, Dana. Good deal. I love hearing that. Yay, you. So, okay, so how do you know is it us or is it them? There's things that, like I said, that we can all work on. But it doesn't mean that any issues that we have somehow makes their mistreatment of us okay. So I just want to make that first and foremost, there's no excuse for abuse. There's none. I mean, you can't, if that's how they handle not getting their way or their frustration or anger or what have you, then that's a problem that you didn't cause and you can't fix. That's on them. So, I really feel like that book, what was it? Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents, was fantastic. That, I would say, if you're looking for, where's my book? I don't know where my book is. Shoot. It's good. I'll show you the cover. It's a really good book. And if anybody is at a place where they're able to kind of, to see kind of bigger picture of problematic behavior in general without carving it up and saying, oh, it's them or it's us, it's just problematic behavior, that can be a really powerful book because there's just a lot in there. And here's the thing is, because this stuff's not taught, okay, and because we grow up in basically a dysfunctional world, there's probably going to be quite a few behaviors that you have, that I have, that need some work. So, it's just part of the process. So this was, and I talked about this before, this was a game changer for me, because for a long time, especially when I was first out, is I was dividing up the world into, there was narcissists and then there was normal people. And I was making myself nuts trying to figure out, well, what's the difference? Because a lot of normal people have problematic behavior. A lot of normal people lie and cheat and steal and kind of, have squirrely behavior. But how do I know? Like, where's the line? How many things do they need to have? How many red flags do they need to have in order to be a narcissist, right? And it was a game changer when I realized, oh my gosh, no, you know what? There's a third category out there. And that third category is healthy. And so, there's a lot. Normal is just different shades of dysfunctional behavior. So anything can be normal. Just because it's normal doesn't mean that it's healthy. So aim for healthy. So then once you start getting an idea of, okay, well, what is healthy then, and then start aiming for that, your life is going to start working for you. So I would say, just as a whole, healthy is dignity and respect. It's understanding boundaries. That's a huge part of it. Understanding where you start and end and where somebody else starts and ends. Kind of what you have control over and what you don't have control over. So we only have control over ourselves. We don't have control over other people. Understanding that a big part of healthy boundaries is that you have different circles. So for a lot of people that struggle with healthy boundaries, they don't have different circles. People are either in your inner circle or they're not in your life. Like, there's no middle ground. So healthy boundaries would say, actually, no, there's quite a few different circles. There's my inner circle, and a spot there is earned with time and consistent, appropriate behavior of respecting my boundaries. We have things in common, their company, it's nourishing. Everything in my inner circle is nourishing to me. That we're able to have, authentic relationships where we're able to have these conversations if an issue comes up, where I know that this person, there's that open, honest, sincere, solutions-oriented communication. Their company, I leave their company feeling, I guess more often than not, because, you're going to have conflict every now and again, but more often than not, I leave it feeling energized and refreshed, versus somebody who's toxic for you. It's the opposite of all that. Instead of, you leave their presence feeling confused and drained instead of rejuvenated and refreshed. There is no open, honest, sincere, solutions-oriented communication. There's closed, honest, dishonest, insincere, kind of domination-driven communication, where they're not seeking to work as a team. They're seeking to get their way. Healthy it's nourishing, it's, it's for you. But that's the thing though, is it, until we're able to understand, like, this goes back to learning to know when you're being treated in a way that's comfortable and not comfortable, which is the beginning. Well, actually, it's easier to tell when you're being mistreated and then when you're being treated appropriately, because it's more extreme. So it registers first. That's the first step. When are you being mistreated and when are you not? So when you're able to tell when you're being mistreated, that's a good start. And then, okay, I need to tighten things up a little bit of, okay, when am I being treated in a way that's not okay with me? And then what do I do with that? So, so aiming for healthy. And what's healthy for you is going to be different from, I do think that there's certain things in common. So like what I was just saying, open, honest, sincere, solutions-oriented communication, treating the other person with dignity and respect, respecting their boundaries, understanding what you have control over and what you don't. These are some of just the foundational components that really, I think, just they need to be there in order for anything else to be there. But then the details are what makes you an individual. So what's healthy for you might be if you really love music, or if you're really into, traveling or reading, or, I don't know, spending a lot of time alone or going out or these kinds of things. Then the people that are in your life, odds are they're going to have some of these same things in common with you. And where this really comes into play is when you're dating and finding somebody, because you've really got to know yourself in order to find a good partner. Because if you don't know who you are, then it's really difficult to find a good partner for yourself if you don't know yourself, right? So really getting clear on what's important to you and kind of where's the line for like what you're willing to be flexible on. But I would strongly encourage you to not be flexible on the kind of the key foundational components, because these are why relationships end. So, okay, let's see here. That's a good question, Rob. He says, is it healthy when you feel safe with someone? I think it's a good start. However, so sometimes what feels safe can still be problematic. So like what I was talking about earlier, how for many decades I went around, I couldn't make friendships or keep friendships that were based on mutuality. That was uncomfortable for me. And so what felt safe, what felt comfortable was if somebody needed me. And I think the deeper drive for that was, it was this feeling of, I've somehow got to earn my keep around here. So if, it was like my social currency, like I'll be nice to you and then I'll somehow earn your friendship or earn your love. That wasn't even consciously my thinking, but no, like hindsight, that's what it was. So if I wasn't in a position like that, then it made me very uncomfortable and very uneasy. So I think we have to kind of, even if something feels safe, to kind of cross-check and ask ourselves, is this a relationship of mutuality? Is there, open, honest, sincere, solutions-oriented communication? Is this a nourishing relationship? And so making sure that what we're calling safe is synonymous with something that's actually healthy for us. Because there's a lot of people that get involved in, quote unquote, safe relationships, or what they feel is a really great relationship, but it's destroying them. But yeah. I guess just making sure that your definition is synonymous with healthy and nourishing. Okay. Very cool. Rob says, thank you. I totally hear you. Good. Yeah. He says it's a start, but it's a process. And then to lead is to love asks, what do people think of ACOA, the adult children of alcoholics? Well, I have quite a few thoughts about that. Is there anything in particular that you were thinking about that? Let's see here. Let me scroll up. So actually, I think I hammered this point home, but just in case I didn't, I just want to circle back around. We're talking about finding people that are, these people that are going to treat me right and that they're going to just be so good to me. Like, how do I get those people in my life? And I just wanted to make it clear if I didn't, it's when we have boundary standards and deal breakers, that's when we start acting from a place of authenticity. And it's all of these little kind of micro moments in a relationship, starting from the very moment that you meet somebody. It's, you've probably heard the analogy of a dance. It's sort of, you're starting to get in tune with the person. And so while they might be, so everybody's on this path, right? Everybody's somewhere along this continuum of personal growth and self-awareness. And you're really doing all kinds of inner work on, boundaries and standards and deal breakers, and you're getting all this stuff figured out, and you meet somebody else and they're on this path too. And you're like, oh man, this person seems so great. But then it's implementing those skills. So these relationships don't just drop into our lap fully formed. They're cultivated. They're cultivated through all of these different interactions with somebody, setting boundaries, being tactful, respecting their boundaries, being able to communicate, having reasonable expectations, all of this stuff. It's the skills, I guess what I'm saying, it's the skill set that makes a healthy relationship. If until that's all there, then everything's going to be out of balance. Luxury asks, how long are these live chats? They're 3 hours. So 3 hours every Wednesday night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Let's see here. So let me scroll up. Okay, so adult children of alcoholics. To lead says, like when things are structured in a way that protects us, but kind of is less effective in terms of actually helping us to get to the root of problems, i.e. abuse. Oh, wait. No, I missed quite a bit. what to lead said. Okay. Well, hello, Kevin. You changed his screen name on me. Okay, good deal. Oh, he says, okay, in terms of therapy, about group therapy being he says, I don't know about group therapy being entirely effective, but maybe I can make it work if I am more assertive or like connect with people on an individual level before or after the meetings. Like when things are structured in a way that protects us, but kind of is less effective in terms of actually helping us to get to the root of problems, i.e. the abuse. Well, so I think making connections with people, I think always kind of helps. But one of the great things about kind kind of, I think really any 12-step or group therapy or anything like that is there's so much benefit, even if you don't say anything right away, of listening to the experiences of other people. It helps to understand that you're not alone, and it helps to kind of dissolve any feelings of shame and embarrassment. And because you just realize, because that's the thing, like when you grow up in a dysfunctional home or with a home when there's drugs or alcohol, you grow up in a home where it's very much the message is you don't tell anybody about what's going on in here. You don't disagree with anybody. You don't see anything. You're just chronically invalidated. So being around other people that have experienced that as well, it just helps to, I think, kind of realize that everything that you're experiencing, the patterns that you've carried forward from that are all, it's understandable because you're able to kind of connect this back of like, oh my gosh, yeah, these were the messages that I had been kind of going through life with. Because a lot of this stuff, what we're talking about here, it definitely applies to adult children of alcoholics, the not being able to tell when you're being mistreated, really struggling with setting boundaries, struggling with kind of just chronic anxiety, always kind of being aware of like the different moods of people all the time, really being very uncomfortable with conflict or confrontation of any kind. This kind of stuff, even though with adult children of alcoholics, it's more thought to be, these are the rules of an alcoholic home. These are the rules of a dysfunctional home. And so all of this applies to a lot of people, like a lot of people. So yeah, I think there's a lot to be gained from groups like that. So, probably one of those things where you just got to hold on to what helps and then let the rest go. But the root really, I mean, there's so many different ways that people kind of get caught up in abuse. But what I was just mentioning are some of the biggest ones, because the result of that, it's not just struggling to tell when you're being mistreated and struggling to set boundaries. It's then the way that we did learn to handle that kind of stuff. Oh, it's through people pleasing. It's through ingratiating behavior. It's through putting yourself last. It's through sinking yourself to save other people. It's through, kind of quote unquote, going with the flow. And there's just ripple effects to all of this stuff. Then it's indecisiveness. Then it's kind of seeking out some of the wrong people, or just chronically misreading situations, for all of the reasons that I just mentioned. That's kind of the core of abuse, like why we're getting chronically tangled up with these kinds of people. And plus all of the dysfunctional messages from society about love and commitment and family and friendships and all of this stuff. And that's a very valid point. Interested says, Dana, I agree that AA and ACOA helps, but you can expose yourself to very dysfunctional abusers playing mind games. Yes. And so this is the thing too, is remember how I was just saying, it's not that these kind of perfect people show up in our life, or even these super problematic people show up into our life. It's our skill set that makes the difference when interacting with them. So if a person's really problematic, we always have to have this skill set with us at all times. And a big part of that skill set is healthy boundaries. And sometimes, I mean, I still fall into this where, you meet somebody and you really click and you're very quick to kind of overshare. And I think with time and practice, you can kind of reel it back in because you're like, oh, wow, I just really said a lot more than I should have. And then you start kind of reeling it back in. But having healthy boundaries at all times and just kind of moving slow and all of that is so important, especially in support groups. So just because somebody's there, because they're an adult children of an alcoholic, doesn't mean that they're a healthy, well-adjusted person or that you have anything in common with them other than the fact that you grew up with an alcoholic parent. Bonnie says, yeah, don't rock the boat. That's what I grew up with. Tyler says, can you give my friend Nick, this feels like a trap, this question. He says, can you give my friend Nick a shout out? It's his birthday today and he loves your channel. I just want to make his day. I'm just going to just go with that. Sure. Happy birthday, Nick. Okay, let's see. Let's scroll here. Cha-cha-cha. Jamie says, every time he starts crying, how could you do this to me? I keep telling him, wait, you just called me a POS last week and how I couldn't do one thing right, but now I'm the beast. Yeah, that kind of, see, I guess once you see this kind of stuff for the dysfunction that it is, it's a lot easier to just disengage instead of trying to prove your point. Because obviously a person, you set a boundary or you do something like, oh, you're so mean to me. I can't believe you do this to me. You're not dealing with a mature adult. And so at that point you have to realize, you know what, here I am trying to reach a solution and be logical with somebody who's not interested in being logical, or they're not capable of it. Their emotional level is not where it needs to be to resolve a conflict like that. And so a big part of it, here's the other thing with setting boundaries, is a lot of people, myself included, for a long time, they confuse speaking up for themselves as the same thing as setting a boundary. Yeah, gosh, I keep telling them over and over and over again, yeah, you don't do that. You can't do that. Please don't do that. This is so rude. You really shouldn't do this. Why do you keep doing this? This is so hurtful. And they just keep bringing it up and they keep saying, hey, this is just not okay with me. But a boundary is only as strong as the consequence that goes with it. And so if you're finding yourself kind of locking horns with somebody where you keep bringing up, boy, this is really hurtful. I can't believe you're doing this. I can't believe you keep, looking at other girls and you keep, doing this stuff and you keep calling me names and you keep doing all this stuff. Like, when are you going to stop? That's not setting a boundary, that you're still wrestling around in the mud with them. And so it's not reasonable to expect that they're actually going to change, because they have shown you that they're not. They're a million miles away from that. Because it's not even about changing. It's about learning brand new skills. It's about increasing their emotional intelligence. And Mara says, yeah, it's hard when the people you turn to for strength, like a pastor, turns out to be the same. Mm-hmm. It sure is. Let's see, let me. Glitterbox asks Dana, how did you discover narcissistic abuse? It was a long process, and I'm not even 100% sure, to be honest with you. I feel like I know I stumbled across a support group on Facebook, and I don't even know how. I mean, it was a total fluke thing. So I had my own experiences. And I'm sorry, it is so freaking warm in here, and my hair is getting all frizzy and hot. I had my own experiences. The first real experience, I was a teenager. I was, I don't know, 16, 17, and I was dating this guy who was really a scary dude. And that ended. That was awful. And he stalked me for years after that, and it was just scary. I didn't realize that that was any form of abuse because he never hit me. He never cussed at me, nothing. He was just intimidating nonstop and threatening to kill me or to hurt my brother or people that I loved if I didn't do what he wanted. That relationship ended. I promised myself I would never date anybody like him again, and I never did. So fast forward, 20 something years, really. I dated a handful of like mildly problematic people, I guess, in between them, but nothing like that. And I dated a bunch of awesome people too. So it just, I didn't see any patterns, I guess is what I'm saying. And then I dated somebody I dated Jack when I was in my, I guess, like early 30s. And that was so over the top, just outrageous, scary, sociopathic behavior, double life kind of stuff. Again, he was really great to me, but I found out it was all just this whole lie. And then I thought that was a fluke. That was just a hit and run kind of a thing. Anybody could have gotten roped into that because he just came across as charming. And then a few years, like a handful of years or so after that, I got tangled up with Steve. And then there were so many similarities with all of the deceit and the chaos and everything. Then I thought, okay, this isn't a fluke thing. This is now a pattern. What am I missing? And that was what kind of sent me down this bunny trail, because when I was working on healing from my relationship with Jack, I didn't know what had happened with any of those relationships, because it didn't, it wasn't how I thought of abuse. There wasn't violence. There wasn't, with Jack at the end, I think he was actually trying to kill me, but there wasn't, screaming and hitting and any of that. So I didn't identify it, but I had PTSD from that, which I also took me years to identify because it didn't seem like that should be valid, So it was years of trying to figure out what on earth is wrong and what happened. Then I don't know. Like I said, I don't know. I stumbled somehow got into a support group on Facebook, and then everything made sense. And I just became obsessive about learning about everything and researching it and all of that. And it was the missing pieces of the puzzle. So it was weird because, from my background, I used to work as a domestic violence educator. I was a psychiatric nurse who specialized in personality disorders and mental illness. So I had a ton of clinical training, but I hadn't connected it to, I guess the difference between theory and application in my own life, if that makes sense. I don't know. It was just very strange. I just wasn't making the connections that I needed to make. And so, And read, I can't even tell you how many books. We've had this book club thing going, I don't know, 3-4 years now, 5 years, I don't know, a book a month for that. And that's just what we do book club over. I normally read more than that. So I've read numerous books on this topic, and it's absolutely fascinating to me. So it was just kind of serendipitous in a way that I came across it, and it was just going down this rabbit hole. Speaking of book club, we're not doing it tomorrow night. So I apologize. It's poor time management on my end. But we're going to do it the Thursday next. So not this coming Thursday, but next Thursday. I ran out of time. TJ says, I didn't see it in my own life either at first. Yeah, I really don't think that anybody does. That's the thing, because this stuff is so easily glossed over. The stuff that we're taught is we all have this idea of what different problems look like. We have this idea of what an abusive person looks like or how they act. And so when we experience something that's other than that, it doesn't line up. So, it's a challenge. And this is for everybody. This is for everybody, therapists, police officers, attorneys, judges, you name it. It's just really difficult. If a person hasn't experienced, and I would even say it took me running a large support group. We have 54,000 people in that group. It's huge. It took me hearing the experiences of tens of thousands of people to really start seeing the magnitude of the range of different experiences. And I'm continually blown away by stuff that kind of biases or assumptions that I'll make that are incorrect, that I don't even realize that I had that assumption. Like, for example, the other day, I guess I've known this for a while, but I didn't think about this until the support group. I had always thought adopted children, parents who had adopted children did so because they really loved and cared for them. Because why else would a person go to such great lengths to adopt a child, right? So to me, I just had this view of, oh my gosh, they're chosen, right? It's so much more. It might sound terrible. It's so much more than just like a normal pregnancy. Like these parents sought out and like handpicked this baby, and then coming across people that were adopted by abusive people for horrific reasons. And you're like, oh my God, that was not even on my radar of possibility for somebody to be so hateful or dysfunctional. So there's still times, situations I'll come across that that catch me off guard. I'm like, of course. Like, why do I keep thinking that evil has rules and it doesn't? So, and then I guess you think about that, like, so here I am, I'm in this stuff neck deep every single day, 7 days a week for 5 years now, hearing the experiences of tens of thousands of people on a regular basis. In that group alone, we get over 150,000 posts and comments a month. So you think about that, what the volume of experiences, the range of experiences that the admins and I see every single month. And you compare that to anybody else, really. That's like, if you're a therapist, you might have maybe 60 clients a month or a week. And how many of that, it's just not even comparable. Like the level of the sharing that happens. And I guess because I'm in that situation, I feel like I'm at the point now where I can have more compassion for people who just don't get it, because it's like, I mean, like, I'm flooded with this stuff every day, and there's still things I don't get. So of course, a person that's just living their life out in the world is going to have no clue whatsoever. And even if somebody's in this field, their experience with this is going to be so incredibly limited, and they don't even realize it. Like, I really thought I had a good understanding of this stuff until about year 2 of the support group, when it really just exploded and began hearing all kinds of stuff. So yeah, Jeffrey says, there seems to be a lot missing from the training of personality disordered specialists. I think mental health in general, I was in a class last night on crisis and trauma, and we were talking about how it really would be so fantastic if they had specific classes on common issues, challenges that people are faced with, suicide being one of them, that really just needs a class all its own, because the training for that, it just needs a class all its own. And then same with abuse, because there's not that much training out there. And what is out there is it's just not presented in a way, at least I have not come across it, that it's been presented in a way that was able to paint a broad enough picture to provide a wide enough level of understanding. So let's see here. Robin, that's scary. He says, how do you know the signs when it's gotten to the point of possibly that they want to kill you? I would say if that's even a concern, it's time to leave, because these relationships can escalate quickly, and sometimes it does not progress in the way that a person might think. And sometimes there can be a calm before the storm, but feeling fear around another person is never normal. So especially if they've ever been abusive, if they've ever, and that's the thing, I wouldn't, what I'm about to say is don't take this and think, oh, well, okay, they haven't done that, therefore I'm safe. So don't interpret what I'm saying this way. But I am saying is, if they've ever threatened to kill you, if they've ever directly or indirectly, oh, it would sure be a shame if something were to happen to you, or, you do that, you're going to show up, you're going to turn up missing, or I'm going to kill you. They've hinted, directly or indirectly said things like that. They've ever physically been violent with you, especially if they've ever if they've ever strangled you, they've put their hands around your throat, even if it was never like to where you blacked out. Anybody putting their hands on your throat, not okay. That's scary, scary stuff. Pulling a gun on you, threatening you, a baseball bat, a knife, anything like that is, it's time to go. So yeah, that's not a normal feeling, and I wouldn't wait. Okay, let's see here. Let me. And sometimes, when you've got somebody like that, who you're afraid that this person's really going to kill you, sometimes I'm a big fan of moving as far away from them as you possibly can. I know it's not right. It's not fair. It's expensive. You have family, you have friends, all of these things. But sometimes that's just got to be what's got to happen. So. Okay, let's see. Let's scroll up here. And if you are in that situation, let me back up a little bit. If you are in that situation, it's worth contacting your local domestic violence shelter and saying, I'm afraid for my life. And I'm afraid that this person's going to kill me. And can you help me come up with a safety plan? And see if they can walk you through that over the phone. If you're feeling very overwhelmed with things, it's sometimes just comforting to have somebody else there that can go through that with you. Crystal says, I am extremely warm and empathetic. I am a INFP, HSP, empath. Am I a narc magnet? So, so this goes back to what we were talking about with their toolkits. So you set the pace. So they might be circling you because they sense, oh, she's cute. And boy, it sure looks like she's going to put up with a lot of stuff. And she's very accommodating and people pleasing and all of this. But if you have boundaries in place, then it doesn't matter if they're attracted to you because you're going to just get them out of your life by setting your boundaries. You're just not going to allow it. And you're not going to justify their poor mistreatment of you. If your new standard is, hey, you know what? My safety and sanity matter at all times. And I expect to be treated with dignity and respect at all times. And I don't tolerate uncomfortable, squirrely behavior. I know when I'm being mistreated. Nobody else has to agree with me. But this is how I like and don't like to be touched. This is how I like and don't like to be talked to. This is how I like and don't like to look. This is how I like and don't like to interact with my friends. This is my life. This is what I do. And, so if somebody starts trying to grind you down and make you feel bad and doubt yourself and all of that, when you're grounded in your boundaries, you're not going to tolerate that. That kind of stuff becomes an instant turn off. And very quickly, you start drawing those lines with people. And if they keep at it, then you're just going to be very quick to get them out of your life. So it's less about who's attracted to you, because we don't have control over that. People are going to be attracted to you for a wide number of reasons. Somebody could be you could have 10 problematic people. You could have a whole stadium full of problematic people, and they're all attracted to you for different reasons. Oh, she's cute. Oh, she reminds me of my daughter. Oh, she reminds me of my niece. Oh, she reminds me of my younger sister that I hate. Oh, she looks like she's got money. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, oh, she's got a car. I don't have a car. She's got a car. Oh, you know what? I hear she lives in a really nice house. I'm going to come up to her and see if I can move in with her. You just don't know. Like, oh, she's got connections. She's got friends. She's got, that can make you nuts trying to figure out, like, how do I just not attract certain people? can't help it. They're very need based, whatever they need in the moment. And, but if you can hold your ground, then it's fine. It doesn't matter. So. Here's the thing too about all of that, because I see a lot of this online with people talking about, oh, I'm an empath. I'm a highly sensitive person. I'm a, whatever, INFJ, this, that, and the other. And there's a lot of kind of some far out, I don't want to mean that in like a disparaging way, but there's kind of all of these other theories out there. Okay, it's energy core, it's this, it's that, it's, law of attraction, it's all kinds of stuff. Please hear me when I say this. It's not that. So it really goes back to boundaries. It really, really does. So I see all kinds of people twisting themselves up into a pretzel, trying to attract different people and do all kinds of stuff. And I see it just gets them further in the mud, because if they're still missing these important parts with how to discern a safe person from a dangerous person, and when they're being mistreated, then all of that stuff, just when they start consulting psychics, they start all kinds of this stuff. And it eventually breaks down, because it's not the tools that you need are still not there. Like, there is no shortcut around this. It's boundary, standards, deal breakers is the core of it. Jamie says, I don't want to move. I really like the city. Can you move farther away? Putting as much distance, whatever that might look like, helps. It can. It's a deterrent. Oh, girl, you live in Las Vegas. That's a huge city. Like, you could definitely get some distance there. Let's see here. Brianna says, what are your thoughts on the human magnet syndrome by Ross Rosenberg? I think it's a great book. And I think it's been a while since I've read it, but I think he's spot on about the, it kind of goes, this might sound terrible, but I'll say it in a way that doesn't sound terrible. We tend to, when we have all of this unexamined stuff going on within us, we unconsciously go about befriending and having relationships with, based off of our dysfunctions. So we tend to unknowingly seek out other people, not based on kind of everything that's well adjusted and functioning, but based off of this own unexamined, kind of unresolved issues that we have. So we just kind of seek our same level of dysfunction. That can feel very victim blaming. And if had somebody told me that, even probably if I was 5 years out, I would have been really upset by that, because I didn't see how that was connected at the time. But there's just a lot, there's a lot unconsciously that's going on behind the scenes of these relationships. And it slowly kind of comes into focus over time. because for most of us, this is how we've always been. And if it's never been an issue until now, it can seem like, hey, this is a hit and run thing. I didn't see this coming. Nobody around me saw this coming. It's not me. It's 100% them. And yes, their abusive, outrageous, over the top, awful behavior, that is 100% them. But then what we need to examine is, we just need to take the time to be self-reflective of, okay, why did this fly under the radar? But this is what I would say, like this, because this stuff's not taught. It flies under the radar of, this is my theory on this, and I'm taking it with me to the grave. This is not common knowledge. So it's not just, we're just deeply dysfunctional and the rest of the world is totally functional. This stuff's not taught. Anybody can get tangled up in it. The people that didn't get tangled up in it, by and large, it's just dumb luck. The people that have this level of self-awareness, that are able to, boundary standards, deal breakers, all of this kind of stuff, it tends to be those who have come through the fire. It's the adult children of alcoholics that have gone on to learn about the balance and realizing, oh my gosh, I didn't realize I struggled with boundaries, and I didn't realize I didn't know when I was being mistreated, and I didn't realize that I had all of these different toxic messages from somewhere along the line, from growing up or what have you, about distrusting myself, and I didn't realize that was a problem to seek validation from other people. I thought that was a fair and balanced and insightful thing to do. I didn't realize that it was a problem to go with the flow. I thought that was a team-oriented thing to do. I didn't realize it was a problem to commitment is, forever, even if I'm being abused. I thought that was the right thing to do. So there's all kinds of, toxic messages there. Yeah. Truth Seeker says, yeah, why is this happening again and again and again? What is wrong with me? Nothing. You were groomed. That's it. Yeah. And that grooming can happen in any number of ways. This is what trips a lot of people up, because they're like, well, I don't know, man, like my home life, for some people, they're like, yeah, okay. My childhood explains everything. Hot mess, awful times, awful. Other people are like, I don't know. I mean, parents divorced. I don't know if that was really that traumatic. I mean, and then they're kind of fumbling in the dark, trying to figure out, well, what is it? How on earth did I get tangled up with a violent psychopath? And this is my theory on it. It's this stuff's not taught. And so, but what is taught is really dysfunctional messages. And so anybody that's walking around with even a handful of these messages is it's like walking through life with a paper bag over your head. It's just, and you're walking in traffic with a paper bag over your head, and it's a crapshoot whether or not you get hit by a car. So unless a person's really grounded in this, but most people aren't. Oh, you are so welcome, Jamie B. She says, oh, I love that you all get me. Thank you. And thank you, Dana, for bringing us together. Yes. And you are so welcome. Yeah, Bonnie says, if it wasn't for the internet, I would have never been able to get a wonderful group like this to help educate and heal myself. This is awesome. Yay. Let's see. Yeah. Carol says, yeah, there were family members who did not treat one another well. I feel that is the root of much of the toxic messaging in my case. Yes. I mean, there's just it's so prevalent out there. That's the thing. It's like if you're walking around and we lack the ability to discern the difference between fool's gold and gold. then things aren't going to work. And it's, but it's like this with everything. Like my goodness, frankly, it's a miracle that anybody's life even remotely works, because, this stuff's not like intuitive. And we've all been groomed in the opposite direction. So Crystal asks, well, why is this happening at all to everyone? You want to know my theory on it? This is pretty out there. So to hang on to your hat. My theory is that this is the next stage of evolution. And it's an emotional evolution. So if you think about where people have been over, the past, even a couple hundred years, and how far they've come. Before it was very much this whole concept of getting to know yourself, of boundary standards and deal breakers, and getting in tune with your feelings, and understanding that they're a way, that they're a big part of this feedback system of the environment, and just understanding the mind-body connection. 100 years ago, it was not even about that. Like, you lived to maybe be 30, maybe if you were lucky, and you started working when you were old enough to hold a shovel or lead a goat to water. There was none of this. It was all survival. And then over time, it was, okay, now we've gotten past just trying to survive. Now we're able to kind of settle down. Then it became getting an education. So then people began actually going to school. Then there were child labor laws. And then there was this focus on that. Then kind of the natural progression of that was, okay, actually it's not, and this was, back in like the 50s and 60s. Because the message back then was it didn't matter what children felt or anything. They were treated like little adults, and you're basically seen and not heard, and who cares about what you think and what you need? You're a child because we just thought we should have children because that's what you did. And so there was never this focus on the importance of childhood, or even really bonding in general. And so then there was this whole generation of people who really struggled with that, with every generation leading up to that point, really, of just there wasn't this focus on that. And then it was back 70s, all of this research started coming out about like attachment and bonding, and realizing, okay, yeah, this is actually significant. There's a whole bunch of these babies that are having what's called failure to thrive. Some of them are dying because they're not getting accurate touch and enough touch. And then we began seeing, like in the 70s and 80s, oh my goodness, this is the result. Alice Miller and her work on narcissistic abuse and narcissistic parents, with, oh my gosh, these parents were so self-absorbed that they weren't able to validate their child, and the results of this. And so and she was the forerunner for understanding all of this. And so then it was, okay, actually, yeah, there's certain things children need other than kind of food, clothes, and shelter as a child. And they need more than just, being able to play and go to school and, kind of what was associated at that time with like the basics of childhood. And so now kind of the next evolution of that is really kind of where we are of, oh my gosh. Well, and actually, let me back up a little bit. Then it was kind of understanding abuse. Oh, this is actually a problem. And it started out first and foremost as a woman's issue, because women for a very long time had been treated like property, even in the United States up until the 70s. My grandmother, when she finally was able to divorce my grandfather, who was a just cheater, liar, terrible person, she couldn't get credit in her own name because she was divorced. So, Like she had trouble buying a car. She couldn't buy a house, even though she had money, because she was a woman. So there was definitely this whole, and that was kind of with the whole women's rights movement of, yes, getting women these basic rights, and then no, women are not property, and getting rid of a lot of these laws of, oh, you can't rape your spouse. There's no such thing as marital rape. There's no such thing. It's just not okay. You can't hit your spouse. You can't rape your spouse. Then it's progressed, I would say, in the past probably 15 or so years, but we're still on that cusp of understanding that, okay, abuse doesn't just happen with abusive parents, and it doesn't just happen with abusive husbands. Abuse is just a thing that happens from abusive people, and it can happen to men, and it can happen to anybody, regardless of age, gender, sexual orientation, nationality, you name it. So that's kind of this wave. And I think this next part of it is really this whole self-awareness of putting all of these different pieces together. So let me back up a little bit. So my theory is that, yes, we are on the kind of this next wave of evolution, which is an emotional evolution. And it's the kind of this journey into authenticity, to understanding ourselves. And if, as a result, other people, or maybe I should say the other way around, we tend to be more motivated to figure out other people because it's easier to see their issues, right? And then it leads us to start figuring out ourselves. And we're all motivated by pain. So I don't think anybody is able to go on this journey. You almost really have to have your whole life blown apart, because these messages are so prevalent and they're just insidious. They're just all around us. And so it's so easy to just get tangled up and off into the bushes by one well-intended bad advice, one piece of that. And so a person almost needs to have their whole life just blown apart, and then they're forced on their hands and knees to examine every single piece, brick by brick, to figure out what fits with this new version of you, what's healthy for you, and what's toxic for you, and then to start rebuilding. So all of these painful people out there, this painful behavior, in many ways, it's a catalyst for our growth. And in time, I don't think anytime soon, but definitely not in my generation. The thing is, this kind of behavior, their behavior, only exists because it's tolerated and misunderstood. And so once there's enough people that are awake and they're not tolerating it, and then once trauma and all of this stuff is just handled differently, and these discussions are had in school, starting in childhood, young childhood, about, when we just start kind of indoctrinating children into what healthy is, then a lot of this stuff will resolve itself, because it just won't be tolerated, and people will be able to spot it a mile away. And then they're just, they're done. Yeah, Phoenix says, yes, it feels like your life falls apart like this, and it's much easier to see things clearly. It's still hard, but it's such a different experience. And like Dana said, yeah, hands and knees. Yes, it just absolutely, there's so much that we can squeeze out of this. And they're reassembling your life. It just, when you have your life blown apart, and especially if you're faced with losing everything, it's terrifying. I've lived it, but it can also be very freeing in a way, because you just realize that kind of what's important and what's not. And it's just another level of like, you just got to kind of give up the fantasy or the dream or the expectation and just realize that um, life might not be fair, but it's still good. And that there is still a lot that's right and good with your life. So. In Kim says, yeah, and it's too bad that we're so stubborn. It takes being brought to our knees. Well, and here's the other thing too. So because this information is, most people don't realize what to even look for. That it's really difficult for them to even find it. I mean, I had been reading self-help books because I've just been fascinated with kind of, the journey within, I guess, ever since I was a teenager. And I've read a lot of books, and I never would have picked up a book on this topic because I just wouldn't have applied. I wouldn't have thought it. I completely applied. I wouldn't have thought it applied. So that's the challenge, is, getting material out there for people that, I mean, think about how any of you guys found this YouTube channel or information about this topic. Odds are it was probably Googling something that was like loosely related. Will he ever change? Why does she do this? Is it normal for boyfriends, mothers, dot, dot, dot. What does it mean when they do this? Like the confusion is driving you to the internet to research and figure out, what is this? How do I stop this? And but here, there's so many traps. Like, there's just so many traps out there. So then what happens, right? People they find all kinds of things that they think are an answer. Oh my gosh, I got this book on dating and how to improve my dating. And so or how to be a better wife, or how to be a better boyfriend, or whatever it is. And then they start applying this advice, and here's what's so scary about this kind of stuff, is it might work for a little bit until it doesn't, because it's the wrong solution to the wrong problem. So that's the challenge. And of course, at the time, if you don't know, like that's not the right thing, then you're going to keep you might even internalize it and just think, oh, it's just me. I just attract these people. It's karma. It's, I don't know. God hates me. I'm cursed. I don't know. I just keep attracting these people and missing why that is. So yeah, it's a challenge. It's just, yeah. Mm. Nikki says, yep. And I was told I was brainwashed by the internet. Yes. And a lot of people, because they don't get it, will say that because they don't get it. They're like, well, yeah, you've been reading too much on this topic. You need to read something else, this, that, and the other. Not everybody's a narcissist. All kinds of stuff. And it's so easy. It's easy to get thrown off track when people are saying things like that for a person who already doubts themselves. And we're already looking to other people to validate us, even if we're not even aware of it. And you can tell if you're looking for people to validate you, if you're asking them for advice. So not that there's anything wrong necessarily with asking for advice. It's just a sign that we're struggling with making up our own mind. Just something to be aware of. So, especially with major things. Well, what do you think I should do? What do you think I should do about, should I get a divorce? Should I buy a new car? We're asking other people advice on major decisions. That's a sign that a person's struggling to validate themselves. And I don't know. There's just so much there's so much. And it's just so easy to get lost along the way. It just really, really is. So JM says, yeah, Dana, you're so right. I Googled types of cheaters, and narcissists was listed as the worst type in the article I read, and I couldn't believe what I was reading. It was exactly what I was living. Yes. I felt the same way. For me, when I came across the term sociopath, that was, and I came across that first with Jack. And yeah. So I hear you. Arlo asks, do you list the skills needed to recover anywhere? I don't. I'm currently working on a book that will be out by the end of this month. So in about 6 days, I'll tell you guys more about it next week. So, but in there's a section on, there's quite a few sections at the tail end that talks about that. I'm still debating about because the book keeps growing and growing and growing. And I'm not sure if I just don't want to put in too much, I might just go ahead and put in the information that I have and then just cover it again in a different book. That might just be the solution. But in this book, as it stands, I have in there about self-esteem. I have in there about kind of personality traits that tend to be exploited. I have in there about boundaries and standards and deal breakers. I have in there's a whole section on kind of things about us and seeing kind of the range of different types of manipulative behavior, different types of manipulative people, why crazy making conversations are crazy making. Rob says, yeah, sometimes one book is 2 books, right? Yeah, that's the biggest challenge is it can, when a person first comes across all this, it can feel like taking a drink out of a fire hydrant. It's just so much. And I guess that was the struggle. Is I was like, man, I really don't want to be redundant and pull, I don't want to put too much in one book, A, and then B, if I did put it in one book, I feel kind of weird then putting it in another book. But I think it might just have to kind of be like that because there's all of this stuff fits together. So it's really difficult. It's sort of like trying to explain about World War II. Like there's just certain key players in there and certain backgrounds that are necessary in order to explain the fuller picture instead of just being like, well, Hitler's bad. Okay. So yeah. Okay. Let me scroll through the comments here. Thank you. Kim says, Dana, this is the only place that has truly helped me. Good deal. Thank you. I'm glad. I wish there were more out there, but yeah, this was when I started all of this, it started off as a blog and then it grew into YouTube videos and then it grew into live streams and I don't even know what support groups and all these different things. And it started off with me thinking about what did and didn't work for me, like what I needed back then. That's how it started. And then it's progressed along. That's the awesome thing about hearing from tens of thousands of other people is I've been able to fine tune along the way. And in order, to figure out what other people need and how they best learn and understand all of this. And the one common thing that I have found is this whole component of kind of this educational component of the terminology and really spelling things out that's what people need. Going into therapy, and it can be very validating to talk it through and to feel heard and just listened to. It's really helpful. But unless that educational component's there, it's not gonna, a person's not gonna build up these skills any other way. Because, you've probably heard me talk about when I was in therapy, I was like, finally, I'm like, man, I'm feeling like I'm following Moses through the desert. Like, do you know where we're going? Because I don't know where we're going. So obviously my highest and best thinking got me here. I need to not be the one that needs to figure out how to get us out. So like, I need you to let me know where are the holes in my knowledge. And that was when I realized, oh my gosh, nobody knows. And then when I got into that support group, it was like, okay, this confirms it. And then I just got really busy on trying to clarify this stuff as much as possible. Local tourist says, when I watch Hitler dancing with Eva Braun, it makes me think he's not as bad as he was made out to be. Well, you know what? Let's just talk about that for a second, because you bring up a really great point. When we paint somebody and when we demonize somebody, or the opposite, when we make somebody into a martyr, the downside of that is that we're denying them their humanity. And, Hitler, he did an awful lot of really, was responsible for the deaths of millions of people. So that's terrible. But that doesn't mean that he was, this really scary guy who sat and twirled his mustache all day long and, said evil, hateful things to, and threw rocks at puppies all day. That's where it throws people off, because when we paint certain people a certain way, then it's confusing when we hear good things. Oh, well, this person, Hitler helped to develop the highway system and Volkswagens. And he really did a lot with the educational system in Germany. There were a lot of things that he did that were great. But that's the thing. But he's painted in such a demonized way that people don't realize that. And he should be, don't get me wrong, he should be. This is the stuff that we should focus on, this is, deaths of millions of people. But the downside is then people start thinking like, okay, well, bad people always look and always act bad. And that's why it flies over or flies under our radar, and we just don't see them clearly. So, most abusive, problematic, the BTK killer, his daughter wrote a book. She was like, he was an excellent father to her. He just had this dark, horrific side, that he was a serial killer. So that's what's so scary, is it's not like it is in the storybooks where the bad guy looks bad and does bad things all the time. It's not like, Gargamel and the Smurfs, or I don't know, any other bad character out there. Yep. Carol says it's confusing to humanize a mass serial killer. They eat, they laugh, they sleep, they are among us. Yep. But I think in many ways it's important that we do, so we can see them for what they are. That was the big challenge with John Wayne Gacy, is the serial killer that used to dress up like a clown. He in society, in his community, people loved him. Oh gosh, sorry, I was putting the timer on my phone. People, you know, they really liked him. They had people, so all these people began coming forward like, oh my gosh, this guy tried to attack it. This one person, he tried doing all these terrible things, and people really struggled to see it because they're like, no, the guy that dresses up like a clown and does kids parties, no way. Which is weird because, I mean, yikes. But hey, Lydia says my dog jumped at your timer. Oh, I'm sorry, puppy. Yep. And Lauren says, yeah, abusers can laugh, be funny, buy gifts, do charity work, say some nice words to you, say smart and helpful things, act cute, dance, etc. And they can be so abusive and dangerous. Yep. So that's and this is what throws people off, is because they don't think that this is possible. Oh, he can't possibly be abusive. The guy, he does volunteer work. He's hilarious. He's never been anything nice other than nice to me. Right? She can't possibly. Your mother was abusive. No way. She's 5 feet tall and 100 pounds. There's no way. She brought you a birthday cake. How could she? She's not abusive. And it's like, well, yeah, she doesn't walk around like a scary person all the time. I mean, that's the thing. That's why there's just this misconception. Well, and Robin, and that's the truth. Robin says, well, it's been said that Hitler never killed anyone. His flying monkeys did it for him. Yes. Well, same thing with Charles Manson. But it's still responsible. Given the orders, still part of it. Sam says, my husband of 20 years was living double life, the affairs with my closest friends. When discovered, he abandons me and my daughters. It's been over a year. I still cry every day. He was such a great guy. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I'm so sorry that you went through that. I can only imagine. But I think it's important to understand that the guy that you were in love with was the act that he was putting on. If he was playing father of the year, partner of the year, he was playing a part and he was acting. I went through something very similar. It was not for 20 years and I did not have children involved, but I can understand that level, or something close to it, that level of devastation when you think you're in this relationship with this perfect person and you find out everything's been a lie. That's profoundly traumatic. And yeah. That level of deceit can really rattle a person. Yes, and that's a really great point. Mr. Year 2011 says, one often has to be grounded in order to contain various aspects of the whole of the other. Yes. I think, young Carl Jung talks about this with the shadow self, and doing shadow work, and kind of embracing all of these different parts of ourselves that we're so used to rejecting because they're uncomfortable. And kind of once we're able to do that and really embrace these different sides of ourselves, then we're able to, I think, better not understand, but maybe see other people more clearly. And I think too, once we're grounded more in our own boundaries, and we cultivate that level of self-awareness with these things, when we're able to detach and not get involved with this kind of stuff, it's just a game changer. The way we relate to other people, it's very different. Because then you see the stuff for the dysfunction that it is, and it's a lot easier to just disengage and not take it, not internalize it, and not let it be, oh, this is somehow something profoundly wrong with me, that I got, tangled up with these people, or that they acted this way. They acted this way because of deep dysfunction within them. And it had nothing to do with you. Like, you couldn't have stopped it. The only way that you can stop it is to distance yourself from it. But you couldn't have changed them. You couldn't have fixed anything. The kind of behavior is so deeply rooted, and it would require, they would have to really want to change. You know what I mean? Like, it just has nothing to do with us. Like, you can't walk on enough eggshells and change enough things about you in order for them to be different. It just doesn't work that way. Jamie says, well, why, when I leave, all of a sudden, I'm the best, most beautiful, intelligent, energetic goddess on earth. But when I'm there, I'm a no good, lazy, old idiot POS. Because he's saying all those nice things to get you back. He doesn't mean any of it, really. I mean, when he's saying everything that's nice about you, he's just saying whatever he thinks that you need to hear in order to get you back. And then when he starts verbally abusing you like that, when you are back, then I think you're just not dealing with a mature person, right? A mature person doesn't say any of those things, good or bad. So, like, all of the name calling and stuff like that, he's doing that because he can. This is how it's all about power and control and immature behavior on people like that. It's coming from just this deeply dysfunctional place within them. And if you stay with him, you're just going to get more of that. So I really feel like we just have to realize that mature people don't act that way. He's not a broken version of you. He's his own person with his own unresolved stuff. And it's really important that we see that, instead of thinking like, well, if I just be nicer, if I be more accommodating, if I be a cooler girlfriend, then someday he'll come around and realize that I'm a good thing, and then he'll start treating me right. And that's not the case. And it doesn't work that way, because how he's already acting is not normal. It's not, that sounds dark. It's not, it's a sign, it's a symptom of a bigger problem. And it's going to get worse. The more comfortable he gets in the relationship, if you have children with him, if you combine assets, he knows that you can't up and leave. He's going to get really comfortable. If he's already treating you like this, it's just going to get worse. Thank you, Rob. You're right. He said, okay, it's 11:20 there. Uh, Somebody, real quick, I'll share this with you and then we'll go into our guided meditation. Somebody had posted a funny meme in the support group the other day, and I thought, you know what? This kind of stuff is also worth pointing out. It was funny, okay? But it was, so anyways, it was this person with a series of filing cabinets, and all of these filing cabinet, and the quote was basically like, when you've been gaslighted enough times, this is what you do. And this person had these huge drawers of filing cabinets, basically with receipts. And it would say like October, 2015, and then July 2017. And every drawer was labeled with a different month and a year. And so that they were going to go back through and pick through the receipts and then prove to the person that was gaslighting them. And I thought to myself, that's cute, that's funny. But for a person that has healthy boundaries, they don't do that. They just distance themselves. And I think that's the part. So like what I was talking about earlier, people are like, yeah, I have healthy boundaries. I keep telling this person time and time again, don't treat me like that. That's not okay. Why do you keep saying these things about me? What they just keep trying to defend their worth is what it is. But a person with that has healthy self-esteem doesn't do that. You either see it or you don't. And if you don't, goodbye. But I'm not going to stand here and argue for you to treat me right. So it's the same thing. If a person's continually gaslighting you, and of course, this is easier. I mean, it's different if you're married and you've got situations that are hard to leave. But if we're talking stuff that's going on at work, these are a relationship where there's not children and this kind of stuff involved, that it's significantly easier to leave. You've got friends that are like this, that are gaslighting, that kind of stuff. It's it's deal breaker stuff. So. Okay, real quick, we'll cover this and then we'll do the guided meditation. Mary Doe says, I'm trying to heal, but I'm stalking him. I need help. Well, Mary, I think that, are you talking about in person or online or both? And I guess even regardless of, no, she says, am I the narcissist? I am in hell. I don't know. Take some time. We'll discuss this more next week, but take some time to read up on trauma bonds. And this kind of stuff can make a person act completely unhinged and unlike themselves. And so these bonds, they're forged through what's known as intermittent reinforcement. And so intermittent reinforcement is, we might go over, guys, so just hang tight. Intermittent reinforcement is when somebody gives something and then they take it away, and it's not predictable. So there was an experiment that was done with mice. And so mice would push on this little lever, and then every time they push the lever, a food pellet would fall. Mouse was happy. Well, then the mice would push the lever, and then sometimes food would fall and sometimes food wouldn't fall. And so then the mice became anxious because they realized, oh my gosh, I don't know how to get food. And so they would obsessively push at the lever. And so that when in relationships, it's very much the same thing. So they're giving us all of this attention and affection, and they're feeding us and they're feeding us. And we're trying to figure out how to maintain that food supply, basically. In a normal relationship, there's that sense of mutuality. There's that give and take. I'm nourishing you, you're nourishing me. It's predictable. And it's predictable because that person's behavior is consistent. They're able to communicate like what's going on. There's not silent treatment. There's not ghosting. There's not any of that kind of stuff going on. So it's predictable. It's a predictable environment. these kinds of relationships where there's that intermittent reinforcement, it creates chronic and ongoing anxiety where a person starts freaking out. Oh my gosh, I said something. Now they're not talking to me. Now they've disappeared. Oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. I want him back. Did I just ruin the best thing ever happened to me? What do I need to do to get him back? And then we're in this mad scramble to try to get that attention and affection back. And that creates that sense of urgency. And especially if you've been walking around for a long time feeling lonely or unloved or unimportant, and this person just made that you built your whole life around this person, even if you were only dating for a short time, if you made them your whole world, and they were everything. That was how you got your self-esteem. That was how you felt loved and important and all of these things. And then when that goes away, it creates a panic in somebody. And yes, and so when it's common for survivors for people that have experienced these kinds of relationships to become very obsessive. That tends to be the result, because they're fixated on trying to get closure, trying to get answers, trying to get their partner back. And everything that you're saying, is it me? I must be the narcissist. I'm stalking them. I'm acting crazy. What's wrong with me? But, and Mr. Year says, it sounds like ambivalent attachment. And this kind of stuff, more often than not, does have roots in attachment stuff within us. So that's why it gets taken to like that fever pitch of intensity. Like anybody can get caught up in this. I mean, this is how people get caught up in cults and, just all kinds of stuff. But there tends to be this kind of core wound of something that's making a person vulnerable to begin with. And then they get tangled up with somebody, especially if they're doing a lot of that love bombing and they're telling you everything that you want and hear, and they're making you just feel so loved and so important. It's intoxicating. It really is, especially for a person who's just been starved out. So one of the things I think to break that cycle, though, of stalking him is to realize you've really got to be clear with yourself, whatever answers that you're seeking, that there's no good that can come from what you're doing. There's no answers that you're going to get. Nothing will come from what you're doing except for pain. That's it. Either the police are going to get involved or you're going to see things that you wish you didn't see. It's only pain. There's only pain there. And I would encourage you, if you're not in a support group, to consider getting into some. My group is, you can find my stuff on my website, thriveafterabuse.com. My Facebook group is, my Facebook group is also called Thrive After Abuse, but there's also a Facebook page. So just make sure that if you want to join the group, that you're joining the group. Yeah. And Truth Seeker says, if somebody love bombs me now, I run far and fast. Yeah. And I do too. And here's why, because a lot of people get tripped up with this too. They're like, well, how can I tell the difference between somebody who's, love bombing me and they're sincere versus somebody who's love bombing and they're manipulative? And at the end of the day, love bombing is always 100% immature. So right away, it doesn't matter if you're dealing with a manipulator or somebody who's being sincere. That's immature, and that's always a problem. So, yeah, Mary. So hang in there. These feelings, it's a lot like coming off of heroin. I have never done heroin, but I would imagine it's very similar. It's that same level of craving and dependency and intensity. So look into reading up on trauma bonds and intermittent reinforcement, and realize that the way that you feel, you will not always feel this way. These things do tend to fade in time, but try to come up with different ways to keep yourself busy while you're detoxing, basically, is what's going on. So Yep, absolutely, Arlo. Says, what you're looking for is love, and it's usually the love we missed out on as a child. Yep. And Benjamin says, oh my God, I totally experienced that when my ex left. Yes, that's why. So it's interesting, right? When you start realizing, oh my gosh, this is not just limited to me. This is a thing that happens, and this is why. So, okay, guys, let's do our guided meditation for tonight. And then we're not doing book club tomorrow because of me and my poor time management, but I will be back next week. Angie and I have our live stream over on my channel this next coming week. So what is that? 1:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Tuesday. And then Wednesday, I'll see you at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard. And then Thursday, we'll do book club, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So with that said, let's settle in, and we'll end with our guided meditation. And while people are settling in, I'm going to answer Crystal's question real quick. She asked, Dana, do you crave any of your ex-narcissists still? No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. No, once I saw their behavior for what it was, I realized I was in love with the illusion of who they were. And it's like seeing the behind the scenes of a magic trick. It loses its appeal, and it's not real. And I want things in my life that are real. So, no. Okay, so let's take some time, get settled in. Taking some time to just be present in this moment. Taking some deep breaths in through your nose. And out through your mouth. Bringing your attention up to your forehead. Releasing any stress or anxiety that you might be holding. Relaxing your eyebrows and your eyes. Your cheeks and your jaw. Continuing to breathe. Letting your tongue fall from the roof of your mouth. Letting your jaw hang open. Relaxing your neck and your shoulders. Relaxing your chest and your stomach. Allowing each breath to travel further down deep into your lungs. easily and effortlessly. Letting your chest rise and fall with each breath. Relaxing your stomach. Noticing any stress or tension that you might be storing. Any knots in your stomach or in your chest. And bringing each breath to any anxiety that you might feel. Relaxing your hips, your thighs, your lower back. Allowing your legs to fall into whatever position is the most comfortable for you. Relaxing your knees and your calves, your feet and your toes. Feeling the heaviness of your legs as you allow them to relax completely. Relaxing your shoulders, your upper arms, your elbows, your forearms, your wrists, your hands and your fingers. Allowing your arms and hands to fall into whatever position feels the most comfortable. And continuing to breathe. And with each breath, moving easily and effortlessly throughout your body, that healing oxygen, healing and restoring every single cell that it's touching. Realizing that there is so much that is right about you. That you're doing such a fantastic job with getting in tune with yourself, rediscovering who you are, or perhaps building up much of who you are for the first time ever. And realizing that this next chapter in your life absolutely can be the best one yet. And that we don't just need to survive this, that we can move forward and thrive. Taking some time to acknowledge just how far you've come. Being everything that you, just giving yourself everything that you need. Compassion, empathy, support. That you are strong, you are courageous, you are determined, you are capable, you are intelligent, that you are aware, you are knowledgeable. You're becoming so much more in balance with who you are. You're able to walk a good line with being self-protective, setting boundaries. You realize that you matter. You realize that you have value. So many things that are right about you. So let's take the next 7 breaths for you to turn inward and come up with some things that you can just acknowledge that's good and right about you. Determined, creative, strong, capable, brave, knowing that you have value, that you have worth, that there is so much that is good and right about you. Connecting to everything that is good and right about you. Loving yourself through this process, that you are doing the best you can, that there is a lot to learn, and there's a lot to heal from, and you've got a lot going on right now. But you're doing a good job. You're here, you're getting support, you're reaching out to people, you're engaging in these conversations, and you're being self-reflective, and the questions you guys come up with are just phenomenal. So let's take some time and just visualize your inner self, your authentic self that's been trying for so long to just get through to you, to acknowledge and just say, hey, I'm here. Visualizing, giving that healthy inner self that we're all on the journey to try to discover, giving you a big hug, just acknowledging, just excited. That inner self is excited that you finally found it. Just giving yourself a big hug. You're getting there. You're on the right track. When you're ready, go ahead and come on back and open your eyes. Yeah, and Truth Seeker says, you will get to the other side of this and should be proud of yourself for how far you've come through such a struggle. Yes, absolutely. You really, really can. So thank you guys so much for joining us. This is something we do every Wednesday night, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We normally go for 3 hours. That might be a lie. We might normally go for longer than 3 hours because of my time management issues. So, yes. So thank you for joining us, and I will see you guys next week. Have a wonderful week. I believe this chat keeps going even after I sign off. So feel free to hang around as long as it goes for. So have a wonderful evening, you guys. As always, you are not alone. You are not crazy, and you really can move forward and heal from this. So just lots of love to you. Okay. Take care. Good night.